Sorry about that. So,
Hey.
yeah, basically a bit of disk space problem. So this will be part two. So we'll post them both up to be published at the same time. So sorry. We'll ignore that. But yeah, to carry on just where we were. Um, so this event, understandably, caused huge outrage, and I was actually watching a blog, well, not a blog, but it was just a video that Trevor Noah put out talking about it today, and he thinks that the one thing that's sort of exceptional about it is that of everybody that seems to have seen this footage and looked at this case, unlike what you normally get, which is a lot of um, essentially like wanting to sort of find some grey area and oh well what was he doing before the footage was taken and
Mm.
what's the context and sort of trying to find a way to make it not just this police officer is murdering this man, but this footage is so inarguably it's murder. The man was not resisting arrest. It did not have to be, and there were people on the scene who were begging them to stop, and the police officers did not stop. There were four police officers, one man, he wasn't resisting, he was in handcuffs, he was on the floor, and the whole thing took about 9 minutes.
Mm.
And there's just no excuse for it. The officer, who I will not name, um, he has several complaints against him. He has been fired, and thankfully now he has been charged with third-degree murder.
Yeah,
Um,
fired is not enough, is
Fired is
it?
not enough.
That's
And that was the thing. Like
fired
they
is
fired
fine
them
for
all.
Dominic Cummings. That would be reasonable.
Yeah,
But
fired is not enough. And actually, there have been so many instances where, yeah, someone gets fired and they get another job somewhere else, and basically they're fine. It's a lot easier to get another job if you're a white man in America than it is probably to lose a job if you're a black man in America. It's not okay. But yeah, there was a little window where they were just fired and everything kicked off. That's not enough, and of course that's not enough. Thankfully, he's been charged. Hopefully, he will do serious amounts of time. If you look into his history and some of the other complaints that were against him, the fact that he even still had his job is a worry, because there were several excessive force complaints against unarmed black people. Um, You'd think one of those complaints would be enough to get you seriously reprimanded. But yeah, like it seems, well, Trevor Noah used the phrase, you could do it, so you did do it. And that seems to be what the culture is of it. So, understandably, and I don't want to go too much into this because, again, I don't want it to be sort of the like virtue signalling.
And there are people who are much better informed
Yeah,
about all of this.
but it's kicked off protest. Well, it kicked off protests in Minnesota that have turned into riots, and you have to think, understandably, which have then led to protests going on globally. That in itself is totally understandable, and yeah, it's worrying that it is with the backdrop of the coronavirus crisis and sort of fears for what that will mean public health wise, but
the
at the
idea of
same
kind of
time,
large public gatherings
yeah,
are kind of not great, but then at the same time, like, I mean, it goes to show how serious this situation
yeah,
is that people feel the need to kind of do that, and especially when black people and ethnic minorities are it's shown, the science
mm,
proves that they are more likely to be
yeah,
affected by
disproportionately
COVID
affected by
19.
COVID-19, and it seems that that's not due to any physiological differences. It's due to socio-economic differences of the kinds of jobs and the kinds of lifestyles. And that's usually down to it's essentially a class issue, and class issues usually disproportionately affect people of ethnic minorities. So, with all of this happening, with this as a backdrop, as we say, with tensions already very high, I'm not surprised that it's turned to riots. I'm glad that maybe it's causing more people to have these conversations than normally would, and I'll include myself in that. I think normally when issues of race come up, I get uncomfortable that I'm going to say the wrong thing, put my foot in my mouth, and sort of speak up where my voice is not needed, and I don't want to do that. But then on reading a few different things about this is one of the most important things that you can do. First of all, one of the things that you can do right now, if you're able to, is the people who are rioting in Minnesota. There is a fund that is posting bail for people who are arrested under these riots for Black and ethnic minority people. It's called the Minnesota Freedom Fund. As you know, with us, due to the COVID crisis and Poppet's leg breaking, money is a little bit tight, but I have donated to that. I will put the link to it in the blurb. But one of the other things that you can do that doesn't cost anything is be vocal on social media, share these things, show your outrage, because I was worried that I'm going to seem like I'm sticking my nose in where it doesn't belong. But the other side of that coin, which I hadn't realised and I now appreciate, is for people who this does directly affect, it is good to know you have white allies. And just in the way that I get on my soapbox about sort of gender issues and sort of misogyny and stuff, it's important for women to have male allies. It's important for people of ethnic minorities to have white allies, and to know that, because actually you can use your whiteness to do good by standing up against, because actually if you're a racist fucktard, a black person saying to you you're out of line isn't going to do anything, because you're not going to care what they think because you're racist. However, if other white people call you out on it, you're like, oh shit, I need to moderate my behaviour because I'm going to be called out by... It's the same with sexism, it's the same with homophobia, it's the same with transphobia. It's not actually the place necessarily for the people who are directly affected to do the fighting. Other people should fight for them. That's justice. We shouldn't be going, oh, it's not my fight, so I'm going to leave you to it. Like, that's not okay.
It's very easy to think like, well, I don't want to say the wrong thing. That's an understandable impulse. That's something that I certainly feel a lot of the time. But the danger is you spend so long worrying about saying the wrong thing
that you don't say anything.
Exactly. And
I just want to sort of put it out there that this is very much... We're aware of what's going on. We are affected emotionally by what's going on, and it's awful. Honestly, like, I can't, because this has brought up other cases of similar things happening, and the level of just systemic and constant injustice and unfairness, and just, and I get it's from a place of privilege. I didn't know that it was a fact of life in America, and I imagine it might be the same here. I hope it isn't to the same extent here, because we don't have armed police to the same extent here. But I didn't know this, but it's black parents have to have the talk with their children, and the talk is, if ever you are in a position where you have to talk to the police, you have to be like, make no sudden movements, be respectful, whatever is happening, keep your cool and stay calm, because even if you are the victim of a crime, if it could be even vaguely potentially misinterpreted as you are potentially the instigator, you might be the one that ends up arrested, you might be the one that ends up with a foot on your neck.
I saw a video in this country, and this was from a few days ago, and this is after they've eased the lockdowns. I say in this country, I mean England.
Not this country, then.
We're not in this country at all. I apologise.
We just had this talk.
In England, in the UK, where they've eased lockdown, we can go and visit your friends from a socially responsible kind of distance. And so a guy was doing that, and he got questioned by the police, and they were saying, well, hang on, what are you doing here? And he said, well, I'm just visiting my friend. Well, we've heard that there are drug dealers in the area. Okay, well, I'm just visiting my friends. And, well, you've not given us enough justification or reason to believe that you're not dealing drugs, so we're going to have to... And she kind of grabs the guy's arm, and he's like, sorry, can you not grab me? And he's like, oh, right, okay, well, now you're resisting. So I'm going to put you in hand... And it's just, you're watching it going like, this is feels ludicrous, but it's really happening to someone in the
Yeah.
real world, and it's terrifying. How the veneer of kind of society is
Well,
so.
the thing that's terrifying is in the wake of all of these protests that have turned to riots, which you have to say, understandably,
Oh,
a little sort of montage compilation of. Thank God people have got phones with cameras now, because this is these things are being witnessed now on a different scale. But there's a horrible montage of just happening now in these riots. This isn't like, oh, historic times when these awful things have happened. This is happening now, where police are just like, you're seeing them pepper spray people who were walking away from them, hitting people with batons, driving their cars into crowds and not waiting for people to get out of the way with the attitude of, you don't get out of the way, it's your fucking fault. It's awful, and watching it was really difficult viewing, and I'm just watching it as a bystander on the other side of the ocean. My one little thing that I would like, maybe we can leave this topic on a, a note of optimism, is there is a little glimmer of beauty in all of it, which is one of the planned protests happening in Flint, in Michigan.
yeah.
Was obviously the protest is planned. They sort of announce where it's going to be and when it's going to be, and the police obviously gather. I believe it was the chief of police, and I don't know his name unfortunately, but there's footage going around of his speech to the crowd there. And basically he says to the gathered crowds, I want you to know that we're on your side. I need you to know that the actions of these officers do not reflect us, and we're appalled and horrified that this is all going on. So I need you to just tell me what you need from us, and we will help you. And then some of the gathered crowds start chanting, walk with us. So all of the officers were then immediately ordered to put down their batons and join the march, and they did, and no violence broke out. And there's also really beautiful scenes of them all kneeling in respect at the same time, and it is really beautiful to see that there are good people, and I think the most people are good people who feel helpless and feel sympathetic but don't know what to do, and it doesn't necessarily come into their lives, so they don't interact with this particular horrible side of humanity, so don't have the opportunity to sort of get, like, I would, like, if things are kicking off between a police officer and a big bloke, I'm not standing in the middle of it. I'm 5'2" and not very well. But that it's not necessarily saying that you have to get yourself in the middle of a fight, but you can be a vocal ally, and you can do things. And one police chief deciding to side on the right side is enough for that whole crowd to feel vindicated, to feel seen, and to feel like their voice is being heard and agreed with. And that's enough for it not to escalate into violence. These people are protesting rightfully because it's awful. And when they protest peacefully, they get criticised for it. So, well, fuck you then. I'm gonna make my voice heard the only way I can. And it, like, zero judgment for that. Go for it. Go for your life. I think, like, that's absolutely fair enough and totally understandable, and to be encouraged. The fact that it's all happening now is scary for different reasons, and the fact that anybody's going through any of this with this backdrop is awful. But it's not like you can just go, oh, do you know, this terrible thing has happened, so let's reconvene and protest about it 3 months from now. I guess you can't. And so yeah, all basically my point is there is a glimmer of hope in there, that we're not all bastards. So if you are on the side of not bastards, be vocal about it. Say your piece, and listen and believe. I think, like, and that's the same with any oppressed group. The most important thing you can do is.
Too. It's like, not for, if you're as a man, don't forge in with like opinions and kind of
Yeah, don't
solutions.
be
Just
wading in with the
listen
all lives
and
matter. Fuck you.
just
Shut up and listen.
listen and and believe people and accept their version of events and things. And it's the same with this. As white people, we need to listen and
And learn.
absorb what we're being told and take it on
realise that
board and
we're
kind
not
of-
being individually attacked.
Mm.
When somebody is saying white people do this, well, white people do this. They're not saying you as an individual do this, but if you get defensive, then you're part of the problem.
And none of us need to say not all white people, because that should be taken as fine, but a lot of them do, and it's fucking abhorrent.
Just stop being. If you're being defensive, then I feel like maybe you've got something that you need to defend, and then
if the worst thing that happens to you is you're being grouped in with other white people who are behaving obnoxiously, that is not as bad as being grouped in with other black people and getting murdered, and it's horrendous. So but we should
well, we've actually, because the first one was about 17 minutes long and this one's like 15 minutes long, we should probably stop. But
so much more still to talk about,
well, I don't know, it's like maybe we do a longer one and it's in chunks and people can watch it in chunks. I don't know.
That's what I feel, because there's so much to address today. Because we touched earlier.
I didn't mean to talk about that for so long, but I guess
it's an important subject.
It's too big.
I mean, it's one of those things you could spend hours just on that, couldn't you? And certainly I'm sure better informed, more articulate people will be. But well, we should.
I'll tell you what I will do. I will stop it and we'll do part 3, because I'm a bit nervous again that this is not recording.
All right.
So we'll stop it and we'll do 3 parts, and we'll do a totally new part for the end of this one.
Whole new format.
So yeah, hopefully see you in a sec.
Bye.